and welcome back to Sharks Happen. My name is Hal, and today we are going over our second entry into the cluster attack series. This one is not as brutal as the Papua New Guinea attacks, but there's more attacks in probably a shorter amount of time and all in Sharm el-Sheikh. So we're going to Egypt. At the end of the show, I will discuss the latest fatality that happened there, and I hope you'll stay with me. This is going to end up being a great show. Okay, we're going to start off our cluster series. We're going to start off, all these are off of Sharm el-Sheikh, and the first is on Wednesday, October 20th of 2010. Elena Rubanovich, she is 54 years old, and she is going to go out and do some snorkeling, and it's clear skies, nice day, hot, 102 degrees. So she's out doing snorkeling. This is sometime after her breakfast, so I don't know what the nailed down time on this attack is. And when she's out snorkeling, a shark comes up and kind of gets below her and in front of her. So it's kind of below her, sitting there in front of her when she sees it. And when she must have looked away, or her attention got taken away because she looked back, the shark was gone. So she's 50 feet, about 15 meters, so she's 50 yards from this jetty, and she's swimming towards this jetty to get out of the water after seeing the shark in the water with her. She said that the shark was about her size. So as she starts swimming to the jetty, which is only 50 feet away, the shark comes back and bites her in the leg, and she turns and screams and punches at it, and it releases her, but it bites her again. So she gets bitten in the lower leg, and then after she hits it, it comes up and bites her in her knee. Now she's trying to swim her way to shore after being bitten twice in the leg. She says that the shark is below her, and it's forced trying to come up at her, and she's pushing down on the shark. It's lifting her up, pushing her kind of up out of the water. She finally makes it to the jetty, and she says the shark came out of the water. She said 30 centimeters, so you're talking about a foot, I believe it is. So popped its head out of the water, snapping at her, trying to get at her. And that was the extent of the injury. She had bite marks to her leg and around her knee, 2 separate bites. She did go ahead and beat on the shark, but it doesn't talk about any abrasion wounds or anything like that. So she wasn't bitten in the hands. The wounds were, not life-threatening. She got in, she got her help. She was all set, survived the attack. I didn't hear of any muscle damage, any tissue removal. The way the shark acted after she got out of the water, we've gone over this with the Makos and the spear fishermen, when it follows them in and it acts a fool when it's out there in the water like this one did. I would guess it was a Mako that went ahead and got her. There's no mention of the species, no identification. She couldn't identify the shark. She said that it was about her size though, so you're talking about a 5-foot, 6-foot shark. I'm thinking a little Mako went ahead because they are very stubborn. Not known for taking anything from somebody as far as flesh removal. They just want to bite you when they want to bite you, and they're really stubborn about it, is what I've discovered about that species since starting this show. I had no clue of their MO beforehand, but the way that it acted when she got out of the water tells me it was probably a Mako that went after her, and we're going to go after Mako attacks in this cluster, so it's definitely a possibility. It's what I think happened, and we will move on. Okay, now we're going to cover the second attack. This one happened just under 6 weeks after the first attack. The first attack was on October 20th of 2010. This one is November 30th of 2010. And this is Olga Martsinko. She is 48 years old, and the weather at the time, it was 82 degrees, clear skies, low humidity. The water temperature was 82 to 84 degrees. They say it was warmer water than usual in this spot. So Olga is out. She is swimming, and she's at the beach with her daughter. And she's out swimming, and she's 30 feet from the jetty at 2:40 in the afternoon. And suddenly a shark, she feels something with her hand as she's got her hands outstretched. She's doing a backstroke, and she's got her hands outstretched, and she feels something from her hand as something swims underneath her. And then it comes up and bites off her left forearm. So she gets grabbed. What it did is she said it grabbed her arm and just started wagging her around. So it's doing that shaking and shaking her around as it's got her arm, which ends up being severed. Could have been, had to have been amputated afterwards, but I believe that they said it was severed forearm on that first bite. So it grabs her arm and just thrashes her around. Her forearm is missing. She starts swimming her way to the beach now, or to the jetty, either one. Probably the jetty 30 feet away. They don't say in these how far the beach is. So I'd assume she's swimming towards the jetty, and the shark continues. It left at first after it bit her arm, but then it swam off and came back right away and just started biting her repeatedly. She got bitten in the lower back, buttocks, and in her leg, I believe it is. And her leg ended up with the laceration. I don't know which leg it was. The laceration went from the knee to about, probably mid-thigh. So a nice size cut there from the teeth. And it removed most of her buttocks. And I'll put the link to the picture of Olga so that you can click on it. That'll be in the description. I'll put links to these pictures of the wounds because they're pretty disturbing. She ends up going into arrest when they're taking her in, cardiac arrest. They revive her, get her in, and she ends up surviving this attack, but she ended up losing from her forearm, massive damage to her lower back and to her buttocks, and then that laceration to her, half of her leg from her knee to her mid-thigh. So that's the attack on Olga Martsinko. She ends up surviving. This is an attack, an attempt to predate. I believe this is by an Oceanic white tip that got a hold of her, and we're going to get into the next one right now. Okay, now we're going to get to the third attack, and we're going to stay in the same day, which is November 30th of 2010 at Sharm el-Sheikh. Lyudmila Stolyarova, she is out doing some swimming, and she's about 10 yards from the jetty, so 36 feet from the jetty, somewhere around there. 10 yards, 10 meters, either way. And so she's close to the jetty. It's further from shore. I've seen 40 yards from shore, 40 meters from shore, but they're not shore. She's in the water. It's the same conditions that was going on. It's 15 minutes after Olga was attacked. Why people are still in the water at that time, I don't know. And I don't know how close she was to where Olga was swimming, but you would think that that would make everybody aware, get out of the water. So now there's a diver, and his name is Hassan Ali. And at about 15 minutes after that first attack, he's in the water and he's got a client. He's a diver, and he's got a client down there diving with him. And he says he was in the water for about 25 minutes, and then the shark approached him. This is an Oceanic white tip, about 3 meters, so that's a large shark. That's a 10-foot Oceanic white tip. That is a huge shark. They only get up to about 12. So it comes up to him, and he's used to seeing sharks every now and then. And what he usually does is he says he puts his arms in and stands there straight up and down, making himself look larger, I guess, than the shark would want to deal with. And he had his client doing the same thing. And normally that helps get the sharks to not worry about them and they go away. Well, this one circled them a couple times. So he knew something was up. And then he was able to watch that shark swim up and grab Olga. And he said that he could see that her foot was gone, but with all the blood in the water, he couldn't tell what else was going on. In the meantime, Olga up there at 2:55 in the afternoon, 15 minutes after, Lyudmila, 15 minutes after Olga was attacked, Lyudmila is up there on the water and she is swimming, and the shark comes up and it bites her in the foot, it bites her in the arm, she gets a defensive wound to another arm, and I believe she got bitten in the leg also. The foot, they say, was removed, but they had to amputate the leg below the knee. And I'm going to put up a link again to this picture. This is unbelievable damage. I didn't even know she had a foot left until somebody had mentioned it when they looked at the picture, because of all the damage to the leg that was done by this shark. Definitely removing flesh, a massive amount of it for, you know, how it must have been a short attack for her to get in only 15 yards, 10 yards from the jetty. It must not have taken that long to get to there. But man, this shark was trying to eat her. And like I said, 10 foot, they said female oceanic white tip, and they got a picture of it. Maybe it was a diver that got a picture of it that saw it come up to him, but there is a picture of the shark. Went up and got a hold of Lyudmila. She ends up surviving this attack, even though most of her leg is gone. Her one arm is severed mid-forearm with the bone denuded, so it removed, you know, kind of scraped the flesh off when it bit down, and didn't break the arm until a little further out the bone. So the bone was denuded. That had to be dealt with. She was taken in. She ends up surviving this attack. Both attacks by a 10-foot female oceanic white tip, you know, 40 yards from shore. There's got to be a deep drop off there. There's no way that there's not some kind of a deep drop off in that area. Okay, now we're going to head over to a different spot at Sharm el-Sheikh. The first two attacks, well, the second two attacks, Olga and Lyudmila, both of those were at Coral Bay. This one is at Ras Nazrani. So this attack happens 2 days afterwards. Those were on December 30th, and now we're on January 1st of 2011. The Koliy family, K-O-L-I-Y, I think you say it, Koliy. Viktor Koliy, his wife, and his son are out at this beach in Sharm el-Sheikh, and they are doing some swimming. As they're out swimming, they notice a shark come in, and the shark starts circling them. Now, Viktor is with his wife and son, and he's waiting for the shark to get close to him, doing the circling so that he can push on it. He's a pretty big guy, he used to be into like wrestling, so he figured he'd push the shark away from them. So once the shark circled close enough, he was able to push the shark. But when he did, he pushed it closer to his wife, but the shark didn't try to bite his wife. He pushes this shark, and the three of them now decide they better swim into shore. So they start hightailing it to shore. The son is the fastest swimmer, and he makes it to shore by the time that Viktor gets about 40 feet from shore, 40 to 50 feet from shore. Viktor stands up, sees that his son is on the beach, sees the shark following his wife, but then it turns off of his wife. It was trailing his wife, and it turns and comes at Viktor. So Viktor's waiting for it. He's going to hit it with his mask, and he goes and tries to hit the shark with the mask. Doesn't have any effect. The shark comes up and gives him a bite to the leg. Not a real bad bite. It sounds like it was pretty minor as far as, you know, the size of the shark. This is a 8-foot Mako shark that got a hold of his leg, bit him in the leg, and went about its way. He gets in, gets help, recovers. They said this was a 8-foot, 2.5 meter Mako shark, and by the jaw, they said that it was like an offset jaw. The jaw wasn't normal, let's say. So the bite had some oddities to it, and they could notice that by the jaw, and they end up catching the shark. And when they do catch the shark, they find that its jaw is offset the way that the bite is to the leg. And when they open it up and dissect it, they find out that the liver is only 5% of the body weight of the shark, meaning it's very malnourished. And, you know, the liver is supposed to make up like 25% of the weight of the shark. If it's like a great white, the liver is what keeps them floating. And once that thing goes down, I mean, it's probably almost lights out for any shark. So we're going to get into the very next attack, which sounds like it's the same shark, but it's 5 minutes from then. So we'll get there right now. On this one, we put it down as an attack, not an attempt to predate. 8-foot Mako shark. Okay, we're gonna stick on the same area, Ras Nazrani of Sharm el-Sheikh. Same day, which is December 1st. It is 2 days after the November 30th attacks. I just screwed up and said January 1st. It's actually December 1st. That's when the last attack happened. And 5 minutes after that attack, at 11:55, the shark goes after Yevgeniy Trishkin. He is, how old is Yevgeniy? He's 54 years old, and he's about 20 yards from the jetty. So you're talking about 60 feet from the jetty. He's 40 meters, so it is 40 meters. These people are probably being attacked right around in the same area. This jetty, he's 40 meters off the shore. And so you're talking, you know, 100, 30 feet, something like that. You're pretty close to shore, but you're closer to the jetty, being 60, 70 feet from the jetty. So he says he's out there and he's swimming, and he noticed he's in the water, and it's probably the blue water, I'm imagining like in the Keys, where when you get into like 20-foot depths, you get a nice lighter blue instead of that dark blue. Well, he's out swimming, and he says he could see a spot that was much darker than everywhere else, almost black. The top of the water. That means there's a drop off. That means that it's deep there. And he says, I decided to swim there. So I don't mean to laugh, but that's the last thing I would do. He swam into this dark area and says he looked down in the water, and a shape came shooting up towards him that was just as dark, as black as the water around him, which, Makos do have dark backs on them. The longfin Mako especially has a dark back, as opposed to the short fin, which is usually lighter blue, but I'm sure they can be black too. But it looked as black as the water, and this thing comes up and gets Yevgeniy, bites him in both of his arms. People were able to get him up out of the water. How this could happen 5 minutes after that from the same 2.5 meter Mako that they end up catching is beyond me, and I don't know that they say that it was a 2.5 same Mako, because the people that were on the rescue boat also saw a 2.5 meter Oceanic white tip. So you're talking an 8-foot white tip and an 8-foot Mako both on the scene from this, but this 8-foot Mako has already attacked somebody 5 minutes prior. I'm putting this one on that Mako. Just like I say that the Olga and Lyudmila was the same Oceanic white tip that got both of them. This is the problem with open ocean species. They're not the same as the ones that go after people by a beach. They are different. It's bad when you run into them, like what happened with Rodney Temple and his buddy when they ended up going and, they were down there and they're scuba diving, not too deep, but deeper than I would be in the water. And they almost come up to a ledge that's a drop-off, and up over this drop-off onto the shallower water comes these two Oceanic white tips, and one of them ends up both of them end up kind of piecing them apart, limb from limb. So just a bad news situation when you run into an Oceanic white tip. And, these Makos, this one, if the liver was like that, this Mako's getting an attempt to predate on this one too, even though it severed one of his arms and he had wounds Yevgeniy did to his other arm. I'm still putting that down as an attempt to predate, because this shark had to feed. Yevgeniy, they have yet to say definitely it was that shark. So it could have been an Oceanic white tip, could have been that, could have been a tiger. We've seen that tigers are over in Egypt too, but most of these attacks there are identified as Oceanic white tips or Makos at Sharm el-Sheikh. Okay, now we're going to finish off these attacks over at Sharm el-Sheikh at Middle Garden. So first, the couple of them were at Coral Bay. The last two were at Rosnazrani, and this one ends up being at Middle Garden, all Sharm el-Sheikh. I didn't look into where the first one was, that's my bad, but these are all Sharm el-Sheikh, so it's my cluster. They're all within 3 months, 2.5 months. Not even. I mean, these are tight together. That's 6, 8 weeks, 7 weeks, somewhere around there. So a real tight cluster and a real tight area. And we'll get into this last one, Renate Sieffert. She is out on December 5th of 2010. So this is 4 days after both Yevgeniy Trishkin and Viktor Koliy were attacked, and 1 day after they reopened the beaches after those two attacks. So they had the two attacks on Olga and Lyudmila 2 days before Viktor Koliy and Yevgeniy ended up getting attacked. And then they closed the beaches for 3 days, and then the day after they reopened the beaches, Renate Sieffert is out on the water. It's around noon, around the same time as a few of these other attacks, and she is swimming. She's about 20 yards, 60, 70 feet, so 20 meters from the jetty. They don't say how far she is from the shore, but witness says that she was standing up when the attack happened in about chest-high water. So you're talking probably 4 feet of water that she's in. And a shark comes up to her, goes ahead and goes on the attack, and goes on a feeding event attack. By the time a rescue boat gets to her and gets her onto the boat, they get Renate into shore and they try to revive her, but they fail. So this one is the only fatality of these 6 attacks I think there were. So luckily this was the only one that was fatal, and I'm surprised a couple of other ones weren't fatal by the wounds I was seeing. So unfortunately Renate did not make it. She ended up being bitten in both of her arms. One of them was severed at the forearm. The other one was bitten. Her buttocks were bitten and removed, and she had a bite to the leg and to her abdomen. So the shark was just basically feeding. And they claim, one witness claimed that it was a Mako, you know, but another said that no, this was about a 3-meter Oceanic white tip. She ends up passing away. It would be an attack, an attempt to predate. We're going to say an Oceanic white tip. That's our second cluster, and now we'll get to the end of the show where I'll discuss this recent fatality over in Egypt. Okay, so we'll finish out the show. We're going to discuss this awful tragedy over there off of Egypt. I'm not even sure where it's off of. I'm just going off the video right now because, like I said, I don't cover these in general until there's enough information out, knowing what wounds, you know, an autopsy, something I can go off of to give you more information. So we'll talk about it like I talked about the, you know, Cameron Robbins, where he ended up jumping into that water and shortly afterwards dragged off. This one was terrible because, you know, as I'm watching it, I'm like, well, I don't see anything going on. I'm looking for discoloration at the top of the water. I can't see any of that. And then the water gets splashed up at him. And you see that blood, it's just red water splashed up. I was like, uh-oh, because something, oh man, it's not good, whatever was going on under that water. But then it's even worse because you know something's happening, but you're still not seeing the shark. That's worse to me. And then after he's screaming, and you can tell he's being attacked again, and then the shark kind of shows up next to him with that dorsal break in the water, and then the tail thrashing. That was the second time it broke the water after they flipped him upside down, which is just a horrible thing. But I, you know, have seen that in other attacks. One off of Pebble Beach while the tournament was going on, just off of there. In the water, there was a buoy, a float, you know, buoy for a spear fisherman that at the time was being attacked. The guy on the beach watching says that he could see the guy was flipped upside down, his legs were up out of the water, and there was another woman that the same thing had happened to. I think it was a woman flipped upside down, same type of thing. And I think all they found of her was her swim fins, but that was a long time ago. And some of these, you know, I don't have names of a lot of these people in my head. I have the names, a lot of them in there that are stuck there because of a reason from their attacks. And they're probably the most well-known ones, but, you know, so you end up having him sitting there. That blood splash is the first thing that kind of made me go, uh-oh. And then you see the size of that shark, because this distance between that dorsal fin and that tail was just monstrous. I did want to watch the video because I did want to see the dorsal fin. I wanted to see what that looked like, because with the larger a tiger gets, the more weak that thing looks. In my opinion, it starts looking more like the size and the shape of a basking shark dorsal fin compared to the size of the shark. So they look weak and small compared to the size of the shark to me. So it's just terrible to end up getting that on film. I hope that wasn't the family that was filming that, and if it wasn't, that means that there was prior activity even before they went ahead and started filming. So that's a question I have too, is was that the beginning of the attack, or were there other things going on prior to what we see on that video that made that person film them? So I don't even know that we saw the whole thing, but that's how a shark, when it's feeding, attacks. That's our show for today. I'll be back in a couple days. I hope you enjoyed the show. Always remember, if you go into that water, you are much more afraid of those sharks than they are of you.